So here we go. Let's go. Let's jump into Ask Us, Bro. So Sean Singletary says, should Harden be penalized as an MVP candidate for his lesser impact on the defensive side of the floor? I think we really just talked about that. I think that that is really the true thing that separates Harden from Giannis, because yes, Giannis is drawing more attention offensively. You could make that argument in terms of drawing more bodies, but I don't think you can make any argument about the fact that how much better of a defender Giannis is.
No, he's like something like defensive win shares, he's second, and defensive something else, he's first. Like it's insane. Like he's an insanely great defender. And the other thing is rebounding is part of defense, right? Yes. First of all, Giannis leads his team in points, rebounds, assists. He's like barely second in steals.
I mean, he sells more cookies than everybody. I mean, everything.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And the thing is, if you watch the games and you watch how Giannis affects his team, and never minding the fact that their team on paper at the beginning of the year, you would have never thought that they had enough talent to be the best team in the league by most people's estimations. He out there running that cheese ball 5 out. It's Giannis. But the thing about it, I wouldn't say James is being penalized. If it was James versus, say, Steph Curry, who's not a stellar defender by any stretch, even if it was James versus Kevin Durant, who's a good defender, but he's not an elite defender. He's not Kawhi Leonard. He doesn't change the face of your defensive team compared to other people at his position who are also good defenders. Giannis is one of the number one people you want on defense in the entire NBA, if not the number one person at this current moment.
Yes, he's right up there.
He also has a higher PER than James offensively, and his team has a much better record. So James is getting penalized.
I don't really think there's much of an argument.
I don't think so either. I think people are like James. You look at James' scoring; what he's doing is phenomenal. But you do have to acknowledge that he's doing it in a system where he's allowed to miss literally 18 3-pointers if he wants to.
Yeah, and there's no. I mean, I'm talking about my man is like he is really playing with house money. I mean, for real. I
mean, yeah, his light ain't green; it's white.
It's just whatever, bro. So yeah, I don't think there's any question. I think Giannis is the MVP. All right, 1989 says, do you think that the NBA will expand to 32 or 34 teams within the next decade? If so, besides Seattle or Vegas, where do you think would be the best cities to go business and fan base wise? I definitely think Seattle has to be next. Vegas is definitely on that list, but I think St. Louis is a really possible and should be an attractive city for an NBA team. There was an ABA team there before, and so I think that first of all, the Midwest is just a basketball crazy region in the United States, and I really don't consider it to be too hard to, I mean, and there's a really esteemed St. Louis prep basketball scene. There's quite a few people that come from St. Louis. Jason Tatum's from St. Louis. Darius Miles is from St. Louis. There's a lot of people from that area who have either gone to the NBA or whatever. Or the conversation's been there. So I think that that's a thing that could happen. Imagine seeing Nelly ring a courtside every game because you gotta have this. Every team gotta have their signature celebrity.
Is Nelly still a celebrity? I think he's a former celebrity. Let's not get distracted.
I think he's a celebrity. Why you going down, baby? Dope Street and the rain.
Half the people I played with in Pro-Am wasn't even born when his hits came out.
Hey man, that don't mean it wasn't relevant. Now, I'm not a big. I like, you know what? I like Nelly the person better than Nelly the artist. Like, he always seems like a pretty cool dude. So yeah, but yeah, it is what it is. Okay, so we're gonna skip over this question for right now because we're gonna go into something else before we get, because the FPVR is gonna take a second.
Yeah.
So M71408 says, who is better, peak Pippen or peak Grant Hill? I want to hear what you got to say about that, Nelson.
Okay, so the difficult thing about this is Pippen only had 1 year at his peak without Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
He was awesome.
Yes, he was.
He was Grant Hill-like in that year,
Mm-hmm.
but the rest of his time was spent with MJ. However,
Mm-hmm.
when Grant Hill was in his peak, I saw him go up against Scottie Pippen, and they were
Mm-hmm.
basically neck and neck, point for point.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, I'm going to say peak Pippen.
I would go peak Grant Hill.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Grant Hill, without an injury, would be in the same conversation.
Whoa. We just saw my peak.
Yep. But and I'm basing this off of peak. Peak Grant Hill tells me that without injury, we would be looking at his career in the same light that we look at Kobe's, LeBron's, he'd be in that same conversation. Were it not for the injury. And if that had happened, I don't think we even asked this question about who's better, peak Pippen or peak Grant Hill, because we would look at him completely differently because of what he actually accomplished. So if you're just talking about peak, I mean, Grant was threatening a triple-double every night, and Grant was the number one scoring option on his team, which, like Books is saying, most of Pippen's career, and this is no disrespect to Pippen, I love Pippen, and I usually am the one fighting for Pippen's respect. But in this particular comparison, I think we're talking about two different guys. We're talking about an alpha dog and a secondary guy.
And see, that is why I pick Pippen, because and we have this discussion about Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is at best a second option, always.
In his best situation, in his ideal situation.
Right. And talent-wise, he's a second option. He doesn't have first option talent, but he's the best second option in a perfect situation. Like if I have a perfect situation, my first pick for second option is going to be a Klay Thompson or a Scottie Pippen.
But that doesn't.
Grant Hill, real quick, Grant Hill, I don't think Grant Hill is a great second option. I think he's a guy that needs the ball in his hands. And ultimately, because he wasn't a great three-point shooter and he wasn't super aggressive offensively and he wasn't the defender that Pippen was, I think ultimately Pippen's effect is more positive than Grant Hill's.
See, but in a sense, that's not what the question was, though. The question was, who would you take peak?
Yeah, I would take peak Pippen and knowing I have to get a first option rather than peak Grant Hill knowing I have to get a second option.
I don't know. I think you adding some stuff to the question and adding some layers in there. And but I don't know. I mean, it's not crazy, because like I said, Pippen's amazing, but I don't know. So let's see. Our next question is from 1989. He says, what would you say are the 5 tools for an NBA player, and how many 5-tool players are there, if any? So there's a 5-tool baseball player. That's a guy who can hit for average, hit for power, has a good glove. He can run.
Can you repeat that question? Who would you say the 5-tool what?
Like, so you know how you evaluate a baseball player and say it's a 5-tool baseball player, right? So it's like the basic skills and how well do you excel at each of those skills. So if you were to try to apply that same concept to a NBA player or to a basketball player, what are those 5 tools, and how many players in the league right now do we think would actually have all 5 of those tools?
Okay.
I mean, I would say obviously his handle, being able to beat someone off the dribble. I would say obviously being able to shoot the 3. I would say depending on how you want to split up run and jump athleticism, or if you want to say that's all together the same, I would say that's one of them. I would say strength, physical strength is another. And then I would say vision and passing ability. And then even with that, I left out rebounding. So I don't even know if you can. So what did I say? Shoot from 3, shoot from distance, handle, I would say athleticism I would say agility, athleticism, strength, and then I guess is rebounding. I don't know if I left something out. But you can't even leave out the willingness, the mental commitment to defend, because that you can't leave that out either.
So for me, it would probably be more like playmaking overall, which would include ball handling and the ability to make the pass on and off the ball. It would, well, with the ball in your hands for a while and with the ball just coming to your hands and then moving again. So playmaking. It would be on-ball defense, off-ball defense, rebounding, and I would say this is the tough thing, because with shooting, there's two distinctly different shooting categories, which is shooting off the dribble and shooting off the catch. And I think with NBA, you have to make it 6 stars because you play two sides of the ball at all times.
Yeah, I don't think you can fit in. I don't think you can fit it in 5.
I wouldn't put athleticism only in the sense because if a player can get it done, I don't care what the athleticism is. Like, for instance, Draymond Green is pretty unathletic, but things that he's able to do, some of those things are relegated to athletic players. You know, they say this guy has the tools to be a great defender. They usually mean he's very quick with his feet. He has great quick reactions and all that stuff. Draymond does it with intelligence. So I don't care that he doesn't do it faster.
But he does do some of it with strength.
But I agree with you. But he has the tools. And the thing, that's one of the beautiful things about basketball is some steady, awesome point guards are Andre Miller. Some steady, awesome point guards are, you know, more in the Chris Paul mold. Some guys are more in the athletic mold. But can you get the job done? Like De'Aaron Fox is a really steady point guard, insanely athletic. Insanely athletic. But so I care more about what the athleticism does than whether or not you have it.
But see, I think if you're looking for an apples to apples comparison to the 5 tool concept that you use in baseball, the tools don't tell you about the result. The tools and identifying them are telling you about whether or not the base or the talent is there. And I think that if you're trying, like I said, to make it an apples to apples comparison, you can't jump to the end and say, do they get it done? Because that's not how that's not the way that the concept works. Because if you say, can a guy hit for power? Can he hit for average? Does he have a strong arm? Is he fast? And does he have a good glove? That's not really talking about the results. It's talking about, does this person possess?
But here's the problem, though. There have been so many unathletic NBA players who were great and so many athletic NBA players who are terrible.
Exactly. But that's exactly what I'm saying. That's not how the concept works.
And you know what? That's probably why we don't apply that concept to basketball.
But you could, because you could say the same thing about baseball. You could say, oh, there's been so many big fat baseball players who didn't have an arm, who couldn't run that fast, but they're in the Hall of Fame. But it doesn't matter. They're in the Hall of Fame, but they weren't a 5-tool player. You know what I'm saying? It's really 2 different things. It's 2 different things. Like, there are guys who are 5.
But on the flip, but with baseball, they say baseball is a game that you really can go by the numbers. Like, you can play money ball in baseball. And we have this pushback against analytics because many, many people experienced in the game really feel like there's just too many variables in the basketball game. There's too much motion. The ball goes from one side to the other. There's offense, defense, and then off ball between stuff. I don't think it works for basketball.
But it doesn't work because your mind is going to the results, and the tools are not about the results. The tools are about the basis, the beginning of the conversation, and you're going to the end of it. We're talking about, this is literally about physical tools, not about how they apply them. And so that's the thing.
But you said it's about physical tools. Why would you put 3-point shooting in there? That's not a physical tool.
It is a physical tool. It's the same. It's just as much a physical tool as hitting for average, being able to spray the ball here or there, being able to put the ball into an area. It's still a physical tool, because here's the thing: you may be a good shooter, right? You may be a good shooter, but the result might not be that you end up shooting or making as many threes as another guy because there's another part of your game that you don't have. So you can, that's a tool that you would still have, but it won't necessarily result in greatness even in that area because you might be missing something else. So there's been 5-tool baseball players who have been flops because of something that happened, you know, mentally, or some issue that's a little bit outside of the 5-tool area. So I think it can be applied, but I don't think it can be applied in 5 tools. I think there's too many. There's a few, maybe 6, but not 5. Let's see. I think we can go to FPVR now because I don't think we got anything else unless something came in late.
Oh, well, real quick with the Kyrie Irving thing, right? So I gotta ask us bro a question about Kyrie. Want to hit that real quick?
Oh yeah.
So, and we kind of brushed on this in the playoffs. The question was, is it Kyrie and the Celtics, or is it that Brad Stevens' offense is actually overrated? Right? And so I think the problem with the Celtics is that they are not built for Kyrie, and Brad Stevens' coaching issue with Kyrie is not with Kyrie. His coaching with Kyrie is fine. Kyrie's having his best season ever. And it's not like the Celtics are massively suffering when he's playing that way. The problem is they have too many players that play well without Kyrie. Too many players. They have 2 teams. They have a Kyrie team, and then they have like a Jason Tatum. What's the other guy's name? The other kid, Jaylen Brown's team, right? And Kyrie brings an issue because his defense isn't. They're not as strong defensively as when Terry Rozier is on the floor. And I think Boston plays well as a defensive identity. They don't have the tools. But I do think Gordon Hayward, potentially when he's healthy, plays better with Kyrie. I think the main problem is that Brad Stevens doesn't coach personalities well. So Brad Stevens is only good with certain kinds of personalities. He's only good with certain kinds of players. And the issue isn't that he can't individually coach Kyrie, because he coached with Isaiah Thomas, you know, scoring 30 a night. And they were the Boston Celtics that you see without Kyrie, with a guy in that role. It's that personality-wise, he can't get Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown together and Terry Rozier to play the same way that they play without Kyrie, that they do with Kyrie. And I think it's more personality than X's and O's. This thing about Kyrie dribbling the air out the ball, that's not how he always plays with the Celtics. Like, that's really not them. Like, it's not like he's going out there and, you know, taking 16 dribbles every single play. He runs the offense a lot. And y'all know historically, I'm not a guy who defends Kyrie Irving, but I'm watching the games, and this is one of the reasons this has been such a crazy debate, is because you watch them and you just can't figure out why you guys play so much better when Kyrie's not there. It's not always what Kyrie's doing. They just don't play as well. And I think that the coach hasn't gotten them into the mindset psychologically to do what they need to do when they need to do it. They only can do it when Kyrie's not there. And I think that's the issue. I think it really is a personality thing more than X's and O's.
Well, I think that I would agree. To me, I think, you know, Brad coaches better before it's like, okay, it's like, say you're training a fighter, right? And you're training a fighter, and while they're an up and coming fighter, and before they become a champion, the trainer has the fighter's ear completely, and they're buying into everything they're doing, whatever the game plan is, they're going out and they're doing it. But as they become more successful, they become a champion or whatever, now they're not listening as much. What I think is happening is that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have gotten a little too good to harmoniously share with a player like Kyrie Irving, because they're at a place in their careers where they feel they are ready to take a next step. They feel they are ready to become more a part or more a more dominant piece of their offense. And Brad Stevens doesn't run a real pro style offense as it pertains to depending upon one person to dominate the basketball, to facilitate everything. You know, as Desar was saying in the chat, IT scored without ball controlling from the beginning of the possession much more than Kyrie. Kyrie needs time to pop, get his, take survey the offense, the defense, and choose and pick his spot, where Isaiah Thomas was much more comfortable scoring within the flow of the offense.
Let's talk on that for a quick second. What I see when the Boston Celtics play without Kyrie is literally that some of their players just play harder. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I feel what you guys are saying from an offensive perspective, but when Kyrie's on the floor, it's not like they're a bad offensive team. What I'm saying is, like, they don't play as hard when they play with Kyrie. If nothing else changed, but they just played harder, I think they would be a better team with Kyrie Irving on the floor. And I do think that and they've spoken about this. This is not, I shouldn't even say I think. No, they've all said this outright. No, the young dudes is feeling themselves, and they don't like having to make adjustments now that they had a run.
I think it's a product of what we're talking about. If when you play ball, man, especially with bigs, right? If a big does not know that he's going to get his touches and he's going to be involved in the offense and the flow, and it's not just bigs, it's guys across an entire team. When they don't know they're going to get requisite touches in the offense, like, we go to practice and we all participate in practice, and we sat out here and we worked on this offense, and it's got this branch of play, this branch of play, this branch of play, and if this doesn't work, then the ball goes here, ball goes here, ball goes there. We did all that in practice. Everybody knows the offense, but then we get in the game. It's Kyrie time when we need a bucket, and I'm running my play, and I'm in the position where I'm supposed to be. I'm setting the screen I'm supposed to set. I'm falling into this area of the defense like I'm supposed to, but Kyrie's not giving me the ball because he's offensively brilliant, and he's going to get this bucket, or he's going to shoot it. And even if he scores, sometimes the other teammates feel a little like, okay, well, I guess I'm just out here then. And that affects you on both sides of the floor.
And here's my thing.
I think that's why you're not seeing people play as hard.
And I'm not 100% disagreeing with you. There's one thing I'm disagreeing with, and Czar said this a little bit. The perception is that Kyrie's doing that all the time. He's not. He went up 2 assists this year over last year, and they didn't have this problem with Kyrie last year.
You know what? I think that's a little deceiving because I've watched Kyrie multiple times this year, and people don't necessarily talk about stat padding with Kyrie as it relates to assist. But Kyrie, I haven't looked this up. I would love to see this. I wish Rashidi was in the chat because I'm sure he probably has it on hand. I would love to see what percentage of his assists come in the first half and in the first quarter. Because oftentimes he's far more generous with the ball early in games.
Well, first of all, that's a technique from Kobe.
No, actually, it's from Mike.
It's a game plan. Mike okay, it's from Mike too. So, so Kobe got it from Mike. You facilitate more in the beginning, you create more weapons, and blah blah blah. And I'm not saying Kyrie's perfect, but I don't think it's the Kyrie Irving show when Kyrie plays, and then it's the Boston Celtics show when he sits down. Kyrie Irving plays Boston Celtics basketball enough that I can real quick.
No, I'm agreeing. Yeah, I agree. But there's one
I can put it on the younger guys and say, y'all aren't trying as hard. And the reason that you gave, I don't think that's a good reason because Kyrie, like you said, he's efficient, right? So it's not like he's taking a whole bunch of bad shots and all this, that, and the other. There are some plays that Kyrie makes that I'm like, you should have gave that up. I think that happens sometimes. I think the guys are overreacting to that though, because when you play with a great player, you have to have that weapon too.
Let me ask you this question. Have you ever played with a guy who was really, really good, but just was not fun to play with?
Yeah, for sure.
I have played.
But see, I don't think that's necessarily the case because there are other teammates that Kyrie has.
But okay,
that aren't saying that.
I agree with what you're saying, and I don't think that that's the way that it should be, because I think you should just want to win. But I know that this is a fact that sometimes you play with a person who they get buckets. They get buckets. And they might take 75% of the shots that they take are good shots, but then they got this other 25% you like, dude. But he makes them. He makes them sometimes, or he makes them a good enough times. And I do think that Kyrie is playing enough Celtic style basketball for the guys to just be like, okay, because you still got to let him be Kyrie, because that's what you went and got him for.
And that's my point. Is like,
but I think the problem with that is the system is so much about running the system over running with a spectacular individual player that sometimes that he's too good for the system. That's what I think.
I think with Kyrie only taking 18 shots a game at his skill level, because he is super skilled, right? He's taking 18 shots a game and he has 7 assists. And a lot of times he passes the ball in the flow to offense. Like I'm watching the games, I'm seeing this happen. And I think, honestly, the pick and roll with him and Al Horford is underutilized.
It is.
Al Horford's mid-range shot is insane still. And he can hit the 3. Like, it's unguardable.
Yeah.
I think there's some pouting going on with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
And I think it's Jaylen more than anybody.
Yeah, well, I would say Jaylen is pouting more. Tatum plays harder when Kyrie's not there. You know? Like when Kyrie's not there, Jason Tatum just plays harder. Like literally, just watch it. Like, tell me what you see.
Yeah,
because
I haven't noticed that. That's something I'd have to like kind of focus on to see, because it hasn't jumped out at me. So I won't say that it isn't, but I'd have to like really like pay attention to that moving forward. It's probably a little late now, because you're probably gonna get the best Jason Tatum now you're gonna see, because it's playoff time. But you know.
So my thing is, I think pouting is a bigger problem than Kyrie. I think the offense that they have, the ebbs and flows, Kyrie isolating, 18 shots a game, I think is a fine number. If you have Kyrie Irving taking less than 18 shots a game on that roster, I think you're probably not using them enough, to be honest with you. Yeah. You know, do you really want Kyrie Irving taking less than 18 shots on almost 50% shooting? Like, listen, there's a few, I agree. There's some shots that Kyrie takes that I'm like, you should throw that out. Al Horford was in the corner, you should hit him. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying that doesn't justify your pouting, because he makes that shot more often than not. He's a great free throw shooter. And he's a dynamic scorer. So you gotta take that sometimes.
You gotta let him. You gotta let people take some Kobe shots sometimes if they, you know.
100%. 100%. So, you know, I think the pouting is the number one problem. And the thing is, I do think, and this is why I put it on Brad Stevens, but not as an X's and O's guy. Because X's and O's, it looks fine. As a coach, though, I don't think Greg Popovich would have this problem. I don't think Rick Carlisle would have this problem. You know, I think a Greg or a Rick or a Doc Rivers would be on those young guys like, yo, this is what you need to do. You didn't do it here. You just didn't do it. You know, if Kyrie was shooting 43%, I'd be like, all right, you know, blah, blah, blah. If Kyrie, his assists weren't there, I know some of the assists could be padded, but I really don't think, 18 shots a game. You look at the Rockets, James Harden's shooting like 30 shots a game. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know,
I definitely don't mean to villainize Kyrie. It's because sometimes there doesn't have to be a villain for there to be something wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're looking at here. There's something wrong here. There's a mismatch here. And I don't know that it's anybody's fault necessarily. It's just a mismatch.
Czar trying to get out of pocket. He's talking about the Kyrie defense. No, this isn't the Kyrie defense. I'm giving credit to. I'm openly, listen, I'm gonna tell y'all straight up. Breaking news, right? Is a Fox News alert. I don't even want Kyrie Irving to come to the Knicks.
Not Fox News. We got to do another news stat.
Yeah. But anybody else got news alerts? I don't know. But anyway, I don't even want Kyrie on the Knicks. I legit don't. Like, it looks like it's going to happen from all of this stuff. I would rather we got the second round pick and drafted Ja Morant and had to get somebody else. I'm not a Kyrie Irving fan. Like, I'm not rooting for the Celtics. Yeah, I like them more than I like other Celtics teams, but I'm not rooting for them.
Yeah.
You know.
You done started a chant.
he missed being the host of the show. You see what happened when he ain't host? You see how he happy? Get on the shows off so we can mute you.
Terrible. We're gonna have to have our first ever special guest. This is episode 20, and we ain't had a special guest, but he gonna make himself a special guest. All right, so it's time to talk FPVR.
Tell us about it.
All right, so the FPVR stands for the Franchise Player Value Rating. Okay, it is designed to measure the players who have been of the greatest value to each franchise in the NBA. And the factors are basically what you're supposed to, what it takes into account is individual accolades, individual statistics, tenure, and team success. Okay. Right? So those are the things. Now you have to have played for a team for at least 3 seasons to even be eligible.
Okay, and what does a FPVR stand for?
I just said that. See, this is not a good class. This is not a good class. I just said it stands for the Franchise Player Value Rating.
Okay.
See, this tells me already that you're not going to be down because you're not taking this serious.
I am. I'm taking this so
serious. You're not plugged in. I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my.
All right. So give me some info.
All right. So for years of service, for every year of service, you get 3 points. So whatever your career scoring average is with that team, that's taken as face value. Same thing with rebounding, average per game, the assist average per game, the steals, and the blocks. Now, the steals and the blocks are tricky because the stats for steals and blocks weren't kept into the 72-73 season. So that, 73-74 season. So that
we can start from the modern era on.
Well, I don't do that. I know you don't like anything pre-merger.
See, hold on now. See, I told the people that I watch your streams. I watched you besmirch my name.
I absolutely
in front of everybody. Yes, you said that Books doesn't like talking about anything before 1975. No,
you don't.
Not.
You don't.
No,
you don't.
See,
you
I'm
don't.
trying to explain to you why you're wrong.
You smeared doo-doo on the name of every man who played basketball before 1975.
I tremendously enjoy talking about NBA history. What I said was it is in a historical context because the game and the rules change. That changes the context.
Okay.
And also along with the changes of the NBA rules were the changes in technology. And
here's the thing. I don't disagree with any of that.
Okay. So I can't judge it side by side when we have literally every frame of Zion's basketball existence and Wilt Chamberlain's.
Yeah, I got all Will Smith's games on tape.
Wilt Chamberlain's most important game ever is a picture of him holding up the number 100.
Okay,
right?
well,
I'm saying I can't compare them side by side.
I'm not even going to get into that.
I'm saying for the sake of this conversation, for me to judge FPVR, can we stick to players above 1975 that we have film on, please?
I can't do that, and here's the reason why. Because this is not an evaluation of talent.
Okay. It's franchise value.
Exactly. Because there are going to be some people who were more talented than others who are not on this list without question. But they may not have accomplished as much with that franchise. They may not, the statistics may not be there, or they may simply not have spent as many years in the franchise. All of it gets put in together. So I'll tell you, the results of the FPVR, for the most part, are pretty sound. Okay, so let me finish with the
according to whom
with the form. I'm going to tell you. So
Black John Hollander.
You get 3 points for championship rings. You get 1 point for playing on a team that made the playoffs. You get 1.5 points for playing on a team that reached the conference finals.
Wait a minute.
Oh God, here we go.
Hold on.
Heaven help us today, Lord Jesus help.
I have questions. You want me to pay attention? I got a deep dive.
Yes. Go.
So according to this,
yes,
a player who joins a team and wins 3 championship rings could possibly be less valuable than a player who gets booped in the first round 4 times?
No, because it's a double up. Because you because if you got a championship ring, you made the playoffs. So you got the points for making the playoffs. You also got the points for making the conference finals. You also got the points for making the finals, and then you also got the additional 3 points for making a ring, for winning a championship ring.
Okay.
So yeah, you don't miss that. You get 5 points for making for making an all-star team.
Why is an all-star team more points than? All right,
because you did that. I mean, because it's less than a championship ring, because I'm giving 3 points to the guy who was the star all the way down to the guy who was the last guy on the bench. But if you're an all-star, it separates that. I gave a half a point for being an all-star game MVP. It's only a half a point because it's not that big of a deal, but I thought it needed to be represented. 10 points for winning a league MVP. 10 points for winning a finals MVP, because I think in the scope of a franchise value, winning a finals MVP is just as big as winning a league MVP. If you're an all NBA first team selection, it's 8 points. If you're a second team selection, it's 5 points. If you're third team selection, it's 3 points. If you're the rookie of the year, it's 3 points. If you're defensive player of the year, 3 points. If you're a sixth man of the year, it's 3 points, which is tricky, as well as the defensive player of the year, because that particular statistic or award wasn't given out to the 82-83 season. And then I also have a scaled point selection for all defensive first, second, and third team. So now I'm going to tell you the results of this, as I've said, have come out fairly decently. I think great. So if you were to,
someone told me that Grant Hill has a higher rating than Isaiah Thomas.
This is my point. People don't hear. They don't hear. The FPVR has nothing to do with my ratings formula. I have a separate ratings formula that is entirely different than the FPR tells me who's going to be on the team. The ratings formula is something completely different. Yes, Grant Hill has a higher rating than Isaiah Thomas, because if you look at Isaiah Thomas's best now, okay, Isaiah Thomas is a 93 overall. Now I will let you know that my ratings are much lower than 2K's ratings, because I have no idea what some of the stuff they were smoking when they rated some of these players, because I'm like, where in the world did you ever see this guy doing that where you gave him that? Because what I think happens with 2K a lot is 2K says, oh, this guy has a reputation of being a great player, so we feel a responsibility to jack his overall rating up to here, which now has him doing stuff he never did.
I would also say the overall rating favors well-rounded players over specialists, which is not always, because Shaq with such a low free throw rating, such a low mid-range rating, such a low three-point rating, should have a much lower rating than Hakeem Olajuwon, say.
Wait a minute, say that one more time. Say that last thing again.
I said he should have a lower rating.
Who is that?
Shaq.
Shaq should have a more lower
than Hakeem on paper. Like if you were just to rate them in every category, Hakeem's averages are going to be higher because he scores in more things higher. But on the court, because of Shaq's specialized skill.
But see, I think some of the specialized skill factors into the rating, because there's a strength rating.
Yeah, there's a strength rating, but Hakeem doesn't get a 0. That's the problem.
He doesn't get a 0. But
so here's the thing: if you get a 50 in three-pointer, and I get an 80, and you get a 50 in free throw, and I get an 85, and you get a 99 in strength, and I get an 85, my overall average is going to be higher than yours, even though that 99 in strength might be more of a prominent factor in head-to-head play. And so that's why overall ratings and overall value aren't going to be the same thing.
100%.
But how is Grant Hill a more valuable Piston than Isaiah Thomas?
No, he's not. He's not a more valuable Piston. He's just a higher rated player in the game. It's a different.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? He's not. Isaiah Thomas is far and away the #1 player on the Pistons FPVR.
Mm-hmm.
He has his total is 206.8, and #2 is Joe Dumars, and he's at 155.3. Okay. Grant Hill is 5th on the FPVR list.
Sorry.
So yes. What is? You know what? I gotta get Zod. What are you talking about? Oh, he said, don't drag 2K into this FPVR, man. Yeah, 2K, you know what? I'm trying to tell you. Hey, dude, some of the ratings, like, as I'm rating players, and what Books just said is actually 100% correct. about how specialists get a shaft. Because
Yes.
I just honestly rated Reggie Miller. Honestly, right? I watched so much Reggie Miller, it's ridiculous. Like Reggie Miller might be the guy who I watched as much as any non-Bulls player, right? I loved Reggie Miller. And I rated him honestly, and he's like an 82.
Right. But the thing is, if you had the skills of clutch rating, catch and shoot, contest shot, and Reggie scores so high in those shots that the difference between him and, say, I was going to say Devin Booker, but he's actually not that good of a shooter. Who else is like a good shooter? Say Buddy Hield.
Right.
The difference between Reggie Miller and Buddy Hield at this point in their careers is going to be really big in close games.
Yes.
Because the small margin of error the defense has on Reggie versus Buddy, right? Like Reggie should be scoring with such a tiny margin of error that it feels like he's in takeover as soon as you hit the end of the game, because all of his ratings are coming into fruition.
Yeah, right? Because I think what there is there is a there's a difference between the overall rating, which is just this generic formula,
right.
And then there's a such thing as an impact rating, right? And Reggie's impact, I've played with this Reggie Miller that I created, and his impact is significant. You cannot leave him, and that floor spacing is not accounted for in the overall rating.
And I think 2K uses 2K has to make a devil's bargain of either overrating a player in a category or using inconsequential stats to move the overall up.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. The hands rating moves people up quite a bit. From having made these players and created them and taking guys' ratings up and down, it would probably shock people how big of a deal or how big of an impact the hands rating has on the overall rating.
Right.
And I got an explanation on what the hands rating does from Mike Wang. He told me that it is for loose balls, and it's for loose balls and catching, which I think it should be for more than that. And I shared that with him. And I think that it should be a little bit further, or there should be another piece of that on top of it. But yeah, but it takes it up quite a bit. So and like so I got a lot of flack for my Iverson rating, right? But I had to pay attention to the stats, and Iverson was never a high percentage 3-point shooter, never, right? So well, he was with the Nuggets, he was better his 3-point shooting with the Nuggets was much better, but with the Sixers, it was a lot of it was mid-range stuff, and his overall field goal percentage, dude, there was one year he averaged like 29 a game, but he shot 38% from the field. You know, so if I'm representing that in the game, yes, I have to represent that this is Iverson, and to me, I do that with badges.
Well, here's the thing with a guy like Iverson. He's a great case study because he's a guy similar to Russell Westbrook, actually, that you can rate him one way. The problem is that a lot of his problems are up here. So when you put him in the game, he's going to overperform, even if you rate him accurately, right? So with Iverson, with a 99 speed, 99 ball handle.
Everything you just said is what I have.
Right. The crossover animations are going to be the cheesiest crossover animations you can possibly find. The layup rating, all of that stuff is going to be very high. As we talked about with Kyrie Irving, he's not going to take them Kobe shots that he shouldn't be taking if you're controlling him, and you never get tired. You don't feel the same level of pressure. So yeah, you have to be careful with rating these players for that reason.
And I didn't want to fall into because this is my 4th year doing this roster, and I probably shouldn't take it as serious as I do, but I want to make sure it's dope, right? Like, I'm spending my time doing this. I want to make sure it's dope. And I got Razor's help this year. So Razor, that's why I switched it to PC, because I wanted the faces to look like they're supposed to look. And he's been killing it. You know, really shout out to him. But like, so I didn't want to fall into, oh, that's one of my favorite players, or everybody thinks this dude is really dope. So I want to make sure his rating doesn't piss anybody off. And I think that that's what people kind of get into. Like, Iverson's so many people who, if you were in your teens or early 20s in the 90s, it's a good chance Iverson might be either your favorite player or your second favorite player, right? So because of that, everybody's like, hey, Iverson should be a 97. Dude, no, he
can't.
Not the way that this game works.
Well, even Iverson himself, when he talks about matching up with Kobe, let's say, he would say, I would try to get Kobe on the offensive end because there was no way I could guard him on the other end. These are his words.
Yeah.
That's for a reason. Yeah. That's an imbalance in things that should show up in the ratings. That has to be represented in the game. The fact that one guy can't guard the other guy.
Yeah, think about it, man. We're talking about a 6-foot, 165-pound shooting guard. How can that guy, as great as he is, ever be rated in the 90-something?
Well, and here's the issue with Iverson. The reason he couldn't play point guard would never manifest in 2K. You would always play him at point guard in 2K.
I play him he starts at point guard on the all-time Sixers.
He's one of the great point guards ever if he just plays proper point guard. But let's go to FPBR because we agreeing on a lot of stuff and we probably going to disagree on this right now. So, according to your metric,
yes,
Robert Horry and Tim Duncan get the same amount of points for their championship
ring. You talking about with the Spurs?
Yeah.
Well, no, because Duncan has some rings without Horry.
I'm saying for the rings that they got together. Let's say hypothetically, any time that a star player doesn't get Finals MVP, they get the exact same amount of points for the championship as a role player.
They get the same amount of points in the championship, but they don't get the same amount of points for the season because obviously if you were a better performer, that's where the individual statistics roll in.
So and here's my first major disagreement with the system. I think being at the top of your team in the major categories, we can just for now call it leadership, but you can calculate it if you want with PER and points per game and all that stuff, defensive player of the year. Those things will help contribute towards it. But those players who bring the championship to the team should get more points for the championship, especially because a lot of times other players on that team are either brought in or go to the team so that they can win with that player. So that player should get more points. Like Kobe Bryant and Derek Fisher should not share points for as much stuff.
Well, see, here's the thing. I kind of see what you're saying, but but I know what I've noticed from doing this for every single team for the past 4 years is that it doesn't actually end up working out that way. Because yes, they do get this. It like just with simple math, it appears that they get the same amount of points, but they don't turn out getting that same amount of points because let me think of a situation like even like Isaiah Thomas, Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman was a big part of those 2 championships in Detroit, but he doesn't get the same amount of points as Isaiah for that season. And it's really more about the season than it is about just the championship, because it's more about the entire tenure. And because Isaiah was a better player than Rodman, Isaiah gets his due. Joe Dumars gets his due. And to me, the proof is that you never really see, I don't think you see anybody who was here's one of the ones that I get flack for. Dennis Rodman is not on, he doesn't make the Bulls FPVR. And the reason why he doesn't is because he never made an all-star team with the Bulls. He only played 3 seasons, which is the bottom line minimum for being there. And because the Bulls won 6 championships and they had so much team success. And then there are some players who maybe didn't win the championships, but they were so much better from a overall standpoint than Rodman that they beat him out.
So let me ask your Bulls team real quick, because I'm going to ask a couple of your teams so we can start. So you only go to the top 5?
I got 15, top 15.
Top 15, okay. And Rodman doesn't make top 15.
He doesn't make top 15. He barely misses, but he doesn't. Well,
Okay.
actually, he misses by a little bit. But
So who's your top 15 on the Bulls?
Michael Jordan, of course, Michael Jordan is
Michael
number one.
Jordan, Scottie Pippen.
Second place is not close.
Right.
Scotty's next. Bob Love is third. Derrick Rose is fourth. Jerry Sloan is 5. Joakim Noah is 6. Norm Van Leer is 7.
Hold on. So Joakim Noah is more valuable to the Bulls franchise than Horace Grant?
And here's why. It is it's about the tenure. It has a lot to do with it. Joe has had 9 seasons with the Bulls. Grant had I forget how many it is. I got it in here, but he has more seasons than him. And if Joakim Noah had not had the amount of playoff appearances that he had and had not been a part of the team going to the conference finals, he was an all-star and a defensive player of the year, all defensive team, all NBA first team one year. So it took a lot, and he just barely beats him. He only beats him by 5 points. Actually, not even a full 5. Well, yeah, 5.1 points. It took a lot of individual accolades to move past Horace Grant, because Horace Grant is right after Norm Van Leer. Horace Grant is 8th. So, yes, short answer, yes. Joakim Noah, he has a higher FPVR.
All right, continue your list.
And then Artis Gilmore, Desar's uncle, is 9. Chet Walker is 10th. Luol Deng is 11th.
Okay.
Tony Kukoc is 12th.
Luol Deng has more value than Tony Kukoc?
Hey, I'm telling you,
there's a bug in the system.
It's not a bug in the system. It's not
man.
a bug in, because you yourself talked about how instrumental a player was in a specific run. Grant absolutely was the 3rd most important player on 3 different championship teams. He was. And I think that Horace Grant was a much better player than Dennis Rodman. I get a lot of flack for that, but I think as the Bulls were a better team. The first 3 championship teams, I think, especially the second one that beat Portland, I think was the best Bulls championship team of all. It was even better than the 72-10 team. But Grant was the 3rd best player on those teams. Joakim Noah was the heart and soul of the Chicago Bulls. Yes, Rose was the best player, but Noah was the heart and soul. He was an all-around player, and he did end up getting his own individual accolades. And he was on the team that went to a conference final, and he played on the team longer than Grant and Kukoc. So you got to think about it. Kukoc was a 6-man the almost the entire time he was with the Bulls. So that definitely kept his scoring down. He never made an all-star team with the Bulls. You can say, like the example that you gave about coming to a team specifically to be better because you're joining on with superstars. That is absolutely Tony Kukoc.
Right, and he helped the Bulls a lot in that.
Oh, he absolutely did. No, I mean, Tony could have been a 20-25 point a game guy on a different team, but it's not about that. It's about what he did on this team.
All right. So what's your Lakers look like?
The Lakers have, let's see, Vern Mickelson's number 1. No, I'm joking. No, Kobe's number 1. He has a pretty big lead over Magic.
Yeah, he played a lot more.
A lot longer.
He played a lot more. And they have the same amount of rings, and Kobe scored more than he did. So.
Yes. And but Magic got the 3 MVPs, which is, significant. But it still didn't make a difference.
Well, you know how I feel about MVP, and I'm looking at it this year. If Harden wins over Giannis, I will never care about MVP.
He's not gonna win. There's no way. But Kobe's number 1, Magic's number 2, Kareem is number 3, Jerry West is number 4, Elgin Baylor is 5, Shaq is 6, George Mikan is 7, Michael Cooper is 8.
See. That I know what it is. I know because Shaq only played.
Yes.
How many years did he play?
8.
8. I mean, 8 is a long time, dude.
8 is a lot, but dude, Elgin Baylor. I mean, like,
but he didn't win no championships though.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how you want to do the last championship that he. I mean, he
didn't. He did not win that championship.
He was on the team and he got a ring though.
No, he retired before. He didn't play.
He left, like he played the first 17 games and he retired mid.
Yeah, he didn't play in the playoffs.
No, he didn't play in the playoffs.
He didn't win the championship. You don't win a championship if you don't play. Stop. See, you see what happens?
But now, you know what? I actually debated back and forth after whether I should give him that 3 points for that ring. But his edge over Shaq is more than 3 points.
No, it shouldn't be though, because this is what I was talking about, this is exactly my point. Because Shaq being the most dominant force in the league and leading the Lakers to 3 straight, and also bringing Kobe along into his prime as a winner, set the Lakers up for, I mean, how many years of dominance was it from their first championship to Kobe's last championship? Like, they dominated the league, and Shaq was a big part of the reason that kicked that off. And the Lakers, when they won their 3 championships, it was, people don't remember, but it was bad. Like, when they ran through to Philly was the only team that even got a game off of them for a year. That's insane.
Yeah, I see. But here's
Elgin Baylor never won a ring. It's one thing if he had like 2 and you could be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He didn't even have one. And Shaq went to 4 straight finals.
And obviously, I'm not.
During the Tim Duncan and Karl Malone and Chris Webber and Stojakovic. Like,
here's the thing. Much of the things that you're mentioning cannot be quantified. And if you're making a formula, you can't really include.
You can if you have the top PER players get more credit for their championship rings than the role players. That solved. Cold case solved. Roll credits.
So you're saying that you're saying basically you create a list or a scale and says that if you are one of the, or not even a scale, if you're the top 3 in the top 3 of the PER, right? Mm-hmm. And you and you win a championship.
Let's rephrase this in the form of a question.
Mm-hmm.
If you gave, first of all, if you gave every starter,
mm-hmm.
and let's throw on the 6th man, if the 6th man was a 6th man and not just, the first guy off the bench, right? Mm-hmm. If you gave every starter in true 6th man, right, 1 extra point off over the bench players for their championship,
right,
and then for the remaining people, those 6 or 5 that are remaining, you mm-hmm. gave them 1 extra point in order of PER, right, and 2 more points for the guy who was tops in PER.
Mm-hmm.
What would that be a bad thing for your system?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it would be a bad thing. I don't. I think it's actually a pretty decent idea.
Oh,
no, I do. I think it's a pretty decent idea. Specifically for this particular argument, it wouldn't make a difference. And the reason why it wouldn't make a difference is you would need far more than that, because we're talking about, like, if we were talking about like Kurt Rambis or somebody, then if we're talking about Kurt Rambis versus Shaq, then it would make a huge difference. But Elgin Baylor was arguably the best player in the NBA during the time, right?
Yeah, but if you don't,
Elgin Baylor they went to 9 finals.
Mm-hmm.
They went to 9 finals. They couldn't beat the Celtics, right? They went to 9 NBA finals. He was a 10-time All NBA first team player. He averaged more points, rebounds, assists, and steals during his Laker career than Shaq.
Now, but here's the thing. I'm going to go with a different case. And I know he's probably number 1 on this list. But take Dirk Nowitzki and his finals, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was one of the greatest finals runs in NBA history. And they recently had a conversation about Dwayne Wade. Was he ever the best player in the league? I don't really care about that. But they related it to the fact that some people said Dirk Nowitzki was the best player in the league when he won the championship. Actually, he definitely was. Dirk Nowitzki, during that championship run, not as an overall player, but during that run, was as unstoppable of a monster as I've seen anybody be in the playoffs. And that's why he has a ring. And he should get much, much, much more credit for that championship. According to how incredible he was. That should be recorded in the data.
But here's my thing. What I've noticed is that it doesn't matter. Because
it matters when you have, it clearly does.
How?
Because a 3-time champion on a team should have more clout than a no champion. The point is to win the
See,
championship.
I can't one like if it would be different if we're talking about a no championship guy who never sniffed the championship, who was not nearly the player. Elgin Baylor was arguably just as impacting to his team as Shaq was to his. They just didn't
The
win.
Shaq won championships.
Shaq won championships, but Shaq never won a championship without Kobe, so you can't completely take that away.
No, Kobe would get tremendous points according to his PER.
Absolutely. But it's just I don't know. I don't personally see an issue with that particular one.
Well,
I can see how in some instances that would be a really valid point, and it's like, wow, really? But that one, because of the caliber of player that Elgin Baylor was, I don't have no problem.
Here's the thing. While I agree with you that the goal of this is to make sure that tenure and playoff appearances doesn't ever encroach upon championships, I think what it does, I think one of the most valuable pieces of information of a historic team is the key players that brought championships to that team. 100%. The guys who were the best. 100%. And I think it's funny enough, I'm not even the biggest Shaq fan in the world, but I think Shaquille O'Neal deserves, that should be noted. Like the fact that he was the most dominant thing the league had possibly ever even seen for that number of years. And the fact that they beat so many great teams and that he did it in such tremendous fashion. And again, I'm one of the first people to jump up and tell you Kobe averaged almost 30 points a game during that time. I get it. But that should be noted.
No, you know what? Because it matters. I can dig. You know what I can dig? I can dig a separate category in the FPVR that says something like prime time player or something to that effect. And what it does is it recognizes if you were so say for instance like this. So if you say, I'm going to take the top 3 PERs on the team for that particular season, right? And if you were, so say if you were the number 1 guy, you get a 3. If you were the number 2 guy, you get a 2. If you're the number 3 guy, you get a 1. You get 1 extra point. And for each year that you were that guy, you get these extra points because you were that guy from an all around standpoint. And I could dig that. And that could potentially make it could potentially make and I guess maybe if you're that guy for a championship team, right, then it matters too. But I don't know. It gets a little,
because Derek Fisher is actually a really good case.
Yeah, he's actually 15 on the list.
So, but you look at Derek Fisher versus other players, it would account for the fact that as a starter, he and the clutch shooting, all that stuff, it would account for that. He would be on there because he was a starter on those teams. His PER would give him certain numbers and blah, 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 over guys who might have had better numbers than him, but either didn't win as much or, were on the bench and stuff like that. I think it would just organize that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can kind of dig that. I could actually kind of dig that.
I'm happy to help you, man. I just want to hear.
Here's the thing. Okay. So somebody asked, they wonder where Pau Gasol is. The Pau Gasol did not make the Lakers team. Making the Lakers is probably one of the Lakers. That's right. It's insane because they've had so much winning.
Yeah, and you got guys like James Worthy.
I mean, you got even like Wilt Chamberlain's on the list.
Yeah,
right. But he's low for the Lakers. He's only 12th. But I mean, Wilt averaged 17 and 19 and 4 with the Lakers, and was an all-star every year he was there. And you know what I'm saying? So it's, you know what I'm saying? It's, I mean, wow. It just, then, you look at guys like Gail Goodrich and you're like, okay, well, how, but you don't realize Gail Goodrich went to 4 finals. He won a ring. He was a 4-time all-star. He averaged 19 a game.
The
The
Lakers are a beast of a franchise.
It's a beast.
There's going to be good players left off.
It's impossible for it not to be. But what I wanted to make sure was that the right person was at the top of the list for every team. Bob Pettit's number 1 for the Hawks. Dominique Wilkins is 2nd. People don't realize how good Bob Pettit was from a statistical standpoint. Well, we can argue would he even be in the league in today's game? Maybe, maybe not. But for the time he played, he dominated. Bill Russell was actually number 1 for the Celtics. Think about the rings.
Yeah, of course. That's no question. That's not even
right. Kemba Walker is number 1 for Charlotte. That just shows you how bad that franchise has been.
Yeah, it's tough.
This year, he just moved past Larry Johnson.
And it's also a young franchise.
Yes. Of course, Mike is number 1 for the Bulls. LeBron is number 1 for Cleveland. Dirk is number 1 for Dallas. Alex English is number 1 for Denver. David Thompson's number 2. And if somebody's wondering, Melo is 4. Isaiah's number 1 for the Pistons. Rick Barry is number 1 for Golden State for right now. We'll see how that runs, because Rick Barry does have a ring. He has a ring. And Rick Barry averaged 25, 7, 5, 2 steals, 5 playoffs, 3 conference finals, 2 finals, a ring, and what is this? 8-time All-Star, and what is this? 7 All-NBA first team.
This is where what I'm talking about would come into play, because Rick Barry's a great player.
Yes.
And deserves to be at the top of the Golden State list. But Steph Curry is the greatest player in Golden State history.
And see, here's what I'm saying. This is not about
talent. It's not about talent, but I'm talking about just from a contribution standpoint. Steph Curry is the leader of the greatest era in Golden State history. Golden State has been the most dominant team in the league since 2015.
But see, here's my thing.
Real quick, if Steph Curry got more credit for being great on championship teams, that would separate him from Rick Barry. And I think more people would agree with that result.
Well, here's the thing. If they win the championship this year, by the end of this year, he may pass. He will probably pass.
If Steph retires tonight. Seriously, though, right? Am I right? Like, if they lose in the first round, Steph Curry is still the number 1 Golden State Warrior in franchise history. And it's not just because he's more talented than Rick Barry or the era that we're playing in. You're talking about 5 years of being the baddest kid on the block, and he's the number 1 reason.
Yeah, you know what?
Kevin Durant sits down, they look like they better.
But see, here's where that's where you have to bring in something that is really not quantifiable, in my opinion, because now you're talking.
It is quantifiable. Give Steph more credit.
No, you said that this is the most important era in Warriors history, and I do not dispute that. I 100% agree with that, right? But that's not anything that's an opinion still, even though it's a popular opinion. It's still an opinion.
I'm on paper, the number of wins that they have. This is the greatest they've ever been. Let's put it that way. That's not an opinion. That's objective.
But it's the greatest they ever been. But think about it like this. Think about it from this standpoint. It's the greatest they've ever been because they are such an amazing team overall. Steph Curry was amazing before all of this came together. Of course, yes, he's a better player now than he was early. But part of why they're this good is because of the team. Yes, Steph is the
number
man.
1 reason.
He is the man. He is the man.
Number 1 reason.
He is the man. But Rick Barry was the man on his team, and it wasn't as good of a team.
Correct. But Steph, you said franchise value. Steph has the most franchise value in Golden State Warriors history.
See,
if you gave Steph more, I know you agree with that. So if you gave Steph more credit for his championship accomplishments and his role in leadership during those accomplishments, that would separate him from a guy as decorated as Rick Barry, but not nearly as accomplished.
But check this out. If Steph had won a freaking Finals MVP,
that doesn't.
It does.
You know why it's
irrelevant? You know why it matters? You know why it matters? Because Rick Barry won Finals MVP when they won.
That doesn't matter to me. I think Finals MVP can be overrated, and here's why. Because the main reason is if it was playoffs MVP, I would agree with you. But Finals MVP is so heavily related to circumstances and matchups. It's one series. Like on the Shaq and Kobe teams, there's certain matchups, particularly against the Spurs and Sacramento Kings, where Kobe was like arguably the primary reason they got past. It was the fact that they couldn't match up with Kobe, that they beat those teams because you had Tim Duncan and Chris Webber pulling Shaq out the paint, giving him fits in different ways. When they got to the Eastern Conference team, he was facing against what's one Jason Collins.
So,
come on, son. Like
some of this, what you're
he
saying,
average 90.
Some of this, what you're saying, I don't necessarily disagree with.
Right?
But here's the thing: you can't break from the formula.
You
can't break from it with every single instance because you're going to start to see some of this stuff as a case by case basis.
Well, here's the thing: what I'm saying, if you gave more, we could debate how many points, but
right.
if you gave the starters / 6-man, if it applies, more credit for their role on championship teams, this would even out the results. Even
so, you're going to really be mad the fact that Steph's not even number 2; he's number 3.
Wow.
Will Chamberlain's number 2. Will Chamberlain? Okay, come on, man. Think about.
I don't think it's close. I think Steph has. I think if you're the Golden State Warriors overlord and you say who is the one player that I want for what they've done for me ever, it's clearly Steph Curry. Like clearly.
Here's the thing. I think also you might be being a little too literal with the word franchise value. And I know that partly is on me because that's the name of the formula, but you're looking at it and you're taking the word value and you're partly defining it by something that is not based on pure numbers. You're basing it because you're starting it off with a concept that's not about numbers, but then you're turning it to a number because you're saying, if you ask me who's done the most for me, that's not about numbers. That's about me. And I'm not saying that what you come up with as a result is incorrect, but you're thinking about which one has been the most which one is most valuable. And if you do that, what you're doing is you're like, okay, you may not realize it, but you're considering the era, because the greatest player today is always going to be more valuable from a standpoint.
I'm not considering the era, because here's the thing: this would actually correct for past times too, because if you take a player like, say, Dr. J on the Sixers, his championships would give him more and would help make up for some of that time he missed in the ABA compared to modern players. I don't think there's anything wrong with giving players extra credit for being starters and stars on championship teams. That is not a bad concept.
No, I don't think it's a bad concept, but you know what? I don't think that it would change it as much as you think, because some of these issues or some of these situations that you're arguing them against other fantastic players who have a distinct edge in some key statistical categories. Like, you might not realize it, but Rick Barry has a higher points per game average, more rebounds, and the difference in assist is only 1.5 per game. He also has more steals, more blocks per game, and he played with the team longer.
Points average is one of those things where it counts in bad years. You know what I'm saying?
But see, that stuff right there, that's when you start bringing all that in, then now you're kind of this is
like take Draymond Green, right? Draymond Green's a great example because Draymond was super valuable on the championship teams.
Yeah, he's number 10.
But playing under Mark Jackson, he didn't get a lot of productivity in those years, even though Mark Jackson started the whole thing up. Taught those guys how to play defense. But Draymond getting proper credit for his championship contributions, it would give him all that he needs. Not saying that he's the problem here. I'm just saying it gives him assurance that he gets extra credit for being an important piece on the championship team.
Like I said, I don't think that it's crazy. I just don't know that it is going to change it much. I really don't. Because just as I give Steph this credit, right, for being the man on 3 different championship teams, right,
and the team that lost in the finals,
right, I got to give Rick Barry the same credit for the one championship he won.
Sure.
And the two finals that he made that they didn't win either.
Okay.
So now it is that amount that Curry got over really going to be enough to account for the fact that Rick Barry still made more All-Star teams. He was still on more All-NBA first teams. He was still on more All-NBA second teams. He won a Finals MVP. Curry did not. He won the Rookie of the Year. Curry did not. So,
and I mean, again, that's the case right there. This could be just me and you. I don't think Rookie of the Year matters.
It matters.
Mike Miller won Rookie of the Year.
Any accolade that you attain with a team matters. Now,
so
that's why the point value is lower, though.
Versus a championship team. This is what I'm saying.
It's very low, though. It's very low.
So then it shouldn't be a factor with Curry.
Well, I mean, every point matters.
I think championships should be weighted much more heavily than everything else, and particularly starters for championships, particularly all-stars for championships. So when you got someone who's an all-star on a championship team, their name should be asterisk, underline, golden letters. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think that. Okay,
so we agree. We don't really have to argue about it.
We agree. I just don't think it'll change.
You ain't gonna change it because I'm right, and that's hard for you.
No.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's part of the reason I love you, man. It's okay. It's part of what makes you unique and special.
No, you sound like my father when my mother would tell him something. He would ask my mother for something that he thought she was supposed to say yes to or acquiesce to, and she would be like, "No, I'm not doing that." He go, "Oh, no problem." I
think that's what we are. I think we just became your parents.
No problem.
I do think I would say I would like the FPVR more if starters and stars on championship teams receive more credit than they currently do.
No.
I think the way it is right now, everybody on a championship team for the championship itself is receiving too similar of a credit, and it shouldn't even be close. In fact, I'm willing to bet, according to did you give Elgin Baylor credit for his championship?
I did.
That is a lot. That is honestly.
That was something that his case is like really an aberration. There really isn't a lot of people out there in that situation.
Because of the fact that he wasn't a starter on that team.
No. What I'm saying, you're saying that if there was more points given, but like here's the thing, his gap,
actually playing in the championship, yes, more points for that.
His gap over Shaq is fairly large in the point value. So it would even if I took his ring away. Like, because he has his points.
Let's say it doesn't change their places. Would it be more accurate though?
Say it again.
Would it be more accurate?
What be more accurate?
If Shaq got more credit for being a dominant force on a championship team than Elgin Baylor got for retiring in the championship season, would that be more accurate?
So say for instance, if Shaq got 5 additional points on top of the rings, right? I think because you get 10.
No, but hold on, because he gets the points for being a starter, and he gets the extra 3 for the PER, and then he gets the points for actually being in the championship game.
Well, how is he not? I think that's double dipping there because
why not double dip on a guy who was a championship starter or all-star? What's wrong with double dipping on that? That's what I'm not understanding.
Even almost.
I don't understand what's wrong with giving Magic, Kobe, and Shaq extra credit for being all stars and superstars on championship teams.
If you gave, you're talking about that's like 8 points.
Let's say it is 8 points.
And so it's
let's
8
say
points.
It's 10.
So that would be 24 additional points.
Okay.
So that would not catch him with Elgin Baylor, even if I took away.
Okay, so how much is that? And you took away Elgin's?
If I took away Elgin's 3 points for the ring, yes, it would still not.
No, how much would it be? What were the numbers?
Elgin Baylor would go down to a 270.7, and Shaq would go to a 260.5.
Oh, hold on. Now that we have the actual numbers, we're starting to get to within a margin of error, though.
No. No, we're not. How?
Yes,
How?
because
Because you
those
guys
10
gonna
points,
keep on making up metrics. How about if the man got 10 extra points for going to the bathroom on Wednesday?
because here's the thing. Because I think the most important things to a franchise are the names that were in lights when they won a ring, and then beyond that, when they had playoff success, and then beyond that, people who had individual accolades.
I contend that that is already accounted for.
Not enough.
And
Is it numbers?
I think it is already accounted for because here's the thing. This is why we're looking at your statistics. This is why we're looking at your points. This is why we're looking at your rebounds, your assists. This is why we're looking at that. This is why we're looking at your all-star appearances, right? This is why we're looking at if you made an all-NBA first team, all-NBA second team. That right there is telling me who you were on this team. It's telling me that, and you already got that. You want to give them something else all entirely, which is now going over and above. And the thing of it is you are underselling how good Elgin Baylor was.
No.
And here's the thing: it would be different.
It's not a player rating; it's about value.
No, exactly. But here's my thing: you cannot. This is the formula takes into consideration individual statistics, individual awards, team awards, and tenure. All four of those things. You're wanting to weight one more than the other. And that's not what the formula does. That's not what the formula does.
Am I willing to weight championships more than other team achievements? Yes. Yes, of course I am. You're right.
And you could make the argument that already is. You can make the argument that is already in place because of the amount of points that are given for postseason participation.
That's for those. No, that's one is one and the other is the other.
No, I disagree. I disagree. And I don't think that there are any. I think there are definitely some points of contention here, but I don't think that there are any gross missteps in the placement of the players.
Well, my point is I don't think you lose anything from giving championship players, particularly and when I say PER, I think the top 2, top 3 system is a little oversimplified. I would actually go through history and decide on actual relative numbers that would give more points to. So, for instance, like, an insane PER is like 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a really good PER is 20. And then you start to come down to good player below 20, right? These are like guys who are good, but, they're replaceable generally. But if that guy is doing that on a championship team, you account for those guys whose PERs could be higher, but they're sacrificing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that brings those things into it because there's a lot of that going on championship teams. In fact, most veteran players will tell you the number one thing in winning a championship is being able to do enough but allow the other guy to do his thing. And that sometimes means you're not always getting off. You're not averaging 25. Now you're averaging 18, but you're doing it because that's what's going to get you to win. And so this would compensate for that and also account for those specialists. Your clutch shot hitters like Robert Ory and stuff like that. Your defensive specialists like Dennis Rodman, your rebounding specialists. They would get more credit for doing that and winning everything. Because that's the whole point, is to win everything.
It is the whole point. But like I said, I contend that what you are looking for is already included without this individualization or the specification on these specific roles. I think this is actually already being taken care of. You contend that it's not because you think that Shaq should be above Elgin Baylor.
No, it's not that Shaq should be above Elgin Baylor. It's that according to what you told me and the gap that was there before, and even based on our rough early numbers, the result that was there after.
Right.
Like Shaq only being 10 points away from Elgin Baylor, that even according to what it was before makes more sense. Now I still think that when you get into real specifics, we have hypothetical numbers we're throwing around, but when you get into real specifics, I don't think there's a negative to giving people extra credit for being extremely heavy contributors to a championship secondary contributors to a championship and tertiary contributors to a championship.
And here's what I say. I think that it would only accentuate
Guys,
what's already there.
That's fine, but see, that's not about whether or not it makes it more accurate. Because according to what you're saying, we would have to go through every case and be like, which time does it move this up and down? And my thing is, if it makes it more accurate, I'm willing to go case by case and see if anybody switches places and if they should and if they should not. But according to the discussion we've had so far, I think it makes it more accurate.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it just makes it more of the same. But I think it makes it more of the same. 1989 says who has the highest FPVR. So if you're talking about the highest FPVR on a specific team and not the highest FPVR overall.
Overall, it would have to be. What's the highest?
The highest, well, because like I'd have to add up a couple of different guys, but Mike has the highest FPVR for one specific team. Michael's FPVR is ridiculous, 430.9.
What's Kobe's?
Kobe's is really high. It's right there. Kobe's is 400.8.
Yeah,
it's really it's super high. Hakeem's is 306.4. Actually, Mel Daniels is number one for the Pacers at 169.1. Reggie Miller's number two. Chris Paul is number one for the Clippers, 130.6. Like I said, Kobe's number one. Marc Gasol is number one for the Grizzlies, 104. Dwayne Wade is number one for the Heat at 241, which definitely makes sense. Kareem is number one for the Bucks, 207.6. Dr. J is number one for the Nets, 164.7. I did include ABA if it was the same franchise. If it's not, if it was a different franchise, I didn't include it. But if the franchise like just migrated over,
it's the Nets. It's because it's a franchise thing.
Yes. Kevin Garnett is number one for the Timberwolves at 205.1. Anthony Davis is already number one for New Orleans because the way they split it was everything with the New Orleans Hornets went with the Pelicans. And so that New Orleans Hornets history is so short.
Yeah.
What Davis has already done is already puts him at number one. Ewing is number one for the Knicks. Gary Payton is number one for the Sonics Thunder, but Westbrook is right on him. Orlando Magic is Dwight Howard. The 76ers is actually Dolph Shays is number one. Dr. J is number two. They got the same amount of rings, and Dolph Shays played a lot longer, and the rebounds are higher. The scoring is comparable. And he is not the highest. Now this has nothing to do with rating. So I rated the players based off of their best season, and watching whatever clips they had available of them, looking at their statistics, and just doing the best I could do to try to transform their game to today's game for 2K purposes. Steve Nash is number one for the Suns. Clyde Drexler is number one for the Blazers. Oscar Robertson is number one for the Sacramento Kings, which is the Cincinnati Royals. Of course, Tim Duncan. Oh, Tim Duncan's actually has a higher FPVR than Kobe. He's at 405.7 for the Spurs, and he's number one. And Vince Carter is number one for the Raptors. And Karl Malone is number one for the Jazz. And Wes Unseld, Nips Elvin Hayes is number one for Washington Wizards and Bullets. So like I said, I think the right person is at the top for all of the teams. So,
Well, my final verdict is I think if championships had more weight and specificity, I would like it. But as it is right now, I think the championships are lumped in a little bit, and they're riding the crutches of what it takes to get to a championship. But I think that extra step of actually winning the championship is what franchises. Those are the banners you hang up.
Mm-hmm.
They're held in special regard, and I think the system should reflect that more accurately.
I can dig what you're saying. Like I said, I think what our disagreement is, I think that that's already in there.
Our disagreement is
we would have to. The only way to actually prove,
I'm right.
The only way to actually prove that is to go through some of these cases and to apply what you're saying to see if it changes the result.
Yeah.
That's the only way to prove it, you know. So outside of that, you know, but it's my freaking formula, so I'm not gonna change it.
I know. That's where we at. Hey, the people saw, y'all heard what I'm saying? And when y'all get them rosters and y'all not happy with it,
no, they're gonna be happy. I told some dude that was talking about going back and forth with me about Iverson's rating. I said, look, man, it's free. It's free. I said, and if you get it and you don't like Iverson's rating, you can change the heck out of it. Right. You can make it a 99 if you want. But it's free. So it's all good. Don't even worry about it.
No, but that's my final verdict. Yes. Overall, it's not a terrible idea. It's an interesting concept. Change that one thing.
Probably the single longest segment that we've ever had.
This is how, you know, y'all know how it is, man. This is what we do. If normally what would have happened was we would have went off the air and had this conversation, but now y'all get to be a part of it. I hope y'all enjoy it.
This is 1989's doing.
This is an entirely separate episode now. We did 3 shows this week.
Right. It's about that, because we are going up on 4 hours right now. It's close. So
thank you for everybody riding with us this long. Most of y'all still here. That's much appreciated.
Even Azar left. And he the reason the show even got here.
Cutting up.
Yeah. So all right, guys. I appreciate everybody staying and watching throughout this entire time. As usual, God bless and peace.
See y'all 9 o'clock Eastern next week.